Hello everyone, welcome to the ListenABLE podcast, a podcast where we try and normalise disability by telling lived experience stories. Every single fortnight we release a new episode with a new guest, usually focusing on the nuanced story of new disability. Of course, we've had multiple people who are blind, but how do they become blind? Were they born blind? Did they have it in an accident? Or in this person's case, we have another spinal cord injury. You might be thinking, I've heard so many spinal cord injuries. Well, I can tell you through my research, you haven't heard this one. Dylan Alcott, hello mate.
Oh, I thought you were just going to leave me out of the intro there. You were going that well.
Thank you so much. I did feel like I was flying.
You know, it's a lived experience-based podcast, and you were just about to leave out any lived experience and just crap on yourself.
No, I guess it's got the lived experience. You're not needed.
Yeah, good. Yeah. All right, guys, I'll catch you next week.
See you, mate.
Later.
Thanks, Dill.
See you, guys.
Let's let our next guest introduce themselves.
G'day guys, my name's Nick Dempsey. I'm 29 years old. I'm on the Gold Coast.
Nice. What do you do, Nick? You got to give me more than that, brother.
What do I do? Oh, bloody hell, mate. Where to start?
If it was a Tinder profile, what would you write?
I can't feel my legs. Can I feel yours?
Oh, it's like we set him up for it. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I've never heard that.
Not unrehearsed.
Yeah, that?
No, I like that. I haven't. That was good.
Yeah, very good, mate.
With consent.
Of course.
With
With
consent,
consent,
obviously.
obviously.
Thanks
Obviously.
very much. Thank you.
Now, what do? I do a few different things, guys. I've got an adaptive drinking glove that I've made for myself that I now sell to try to help other people get the same assistance out of it that I do. And I'm also a marriage celebrant. I do that. I do a little bit of sort of modelling stuff, I guess you call it, on the side. I've actually also got my own podcast, so you guys are the competition.
Ooh, shit.
And do a bit of volunteer work with a spinal cord injury foundation up here on the Gold Coast with the Perry Cross Foundation.
Well, I want to hear about this drinking glove first and foremost, because that sounds sick. We'll get into why you need a drinking glove in a minute. We'll get into your story, but talk me through what that entails. Why do you need it, and how does it help?
I've got enough strength and function now that I can lift my arms and get it up to my mouth, but my dexterity in my hands and fingers there's nothing there. So essentially I can lift the weight of a cup up to me, but I just can't hold a cup. So I thought, right, how can I go around? Because so much of my independence through my disability has just been lost. So I thought, how do I go about at least getting myself a drink? So essentially what I've come up with is a neoprene glove that has a stubby holder glued to the palm of it. And I've got one on right here. I can show you.
Well,
Locked and loaded, ready to go.
Product placement, love it.
So Drinking Buddy is what it's called. You can see there's essentially a glove, stubby holder in it. What I can do, I get my support workers to get me a drink, put it in that, and then I can get it up to my mouth and have a drink. So just regaining that little bit of independence has been massive for me.
Don't worry about quadriplegics. There's just lots of pissheads who would absolutely annihilate some of them.
Just
Mate,
big issues in life, just tackling them.
did you ever play that game where you it was called Edward 40 Hands in America, Gus, but you strap two long necks to your hands and you got to drink them.
Sticky
every
cake.
night.
That's you every time, bro.
Every time.
That's
Yeah.
perfect. I love that.
That's really interesting though, because of, you acquired your disability. We'll get to that probably next, but interesting. Yeah. You have the muscle to be able to lift, the 375 mils, which is, with the glass 500 grams up to your mouth. But I guess you don't have the dexterity in your fingers to be able to kind of wrap your fingers around. So you've made yourself a solution. And that's the thing that, I learned probably from the first episode or even before that, meeting Dylan is, people with disability are the best problem solvers. You want to talk about entrepreneurship and inventors, people with disability is some of the best. And there's a great example of it on our screens, or if you're listening to this, hopefully explained really well. It's awesome, mate. Drinking Buddy. Link in the show notes to get yours, everybody. Now, let's talk about it though. You did acquire your disability, and it is quite, if I can say so, ironic that you have a product around drinking when we hear your story of how you acquired your disability. Would you please share that with us?
Yeah, so mine was at my 21st birthday party down in Albury, where I'm from. And I was at home, my parents' backyard, got a basketball ring there, got a pool, had beer pong set up, all the things, just all my mates there celebrating, having a great night. And as I guess most people probably do at their 21st, but I had one beer too many. But mine, I ran to dive in the pool in the backyard and just went to the shallow end for some stupid reason, dove really high, went down, hit the bottom of the pool and dislocated my neck and compressed my spinal cord at the C3-4 level.
It's a tale you hear a little bit and something you don't really get taught a lot at school. There's kind of a few disclaimers around it, but I know a bunch of people that are from a diving pool accident. Had you ever heard that you can't really do that? Had it crossed your mind, or was it the alcohol that kind of stopped you from thinking about it?
I think it was just the alcohol that stopped me thinking about it. And young males, you think you're invincible. I was aware that you don't dive in the shallow end because it's stupid. You've got risk of hurting yourself. But I just, I guess, other than that, I never thought any deeper than that, other than just don't dive in the shallow end. But as just wasn't thinking properly, thinking clearly with the alcohol in my system, and a lot going on, excited, just ran and didn't think any further ahead than what I was doing in that moment, and it just happened.
There is some complexity around your story, and I hope you don't mind sharing some, pre-meeting stuff that producer Amelia picked up. But, that alcohol intake necessarily wasn't all your own. I mean, you were sort of egged on or, encouraged by your best mates at your 21st to drink more in sort of that larrikinism that Australia sort of has. We're going to talk about your mental health as well, but can you talk about the experience for others on that day? Because I know that people thought you were joking initially, but then also there must be some sort of, mood change and regret from your friends who had maybe, given you that extra beer too many.
Yeah, as again, young males normalising what probably shouldn't be normal, but you just do feed each other drinks, and especially my 21st, did speeches, and then gave me a cup of what I thought was beer, and it was actually, like a decent amount of straight liquor, and told to scull that, and got more pissed than I probably should have been. And I know after it happened, a couple of my mates that were part of that, the ones egging me on and giving me some, were pretty upset and felt like they were almost at least partly responsible for what happened. And I had to have sort of a good sit down and have a chat with them around it, and explain that they didn't make me have the other 10 beers that I had before they gave me that cup, and they're not responsible for it. But it really did affect them a lot for some of them. So it was a massive thing after my disability, after I acquired it, that I saw how much it impacts my life massively, but just how much it does impact the people around me and my loved ones and my friends that were there and my family that were visiting me in hospital and all that. So that was a massive thing for me as well.
So on that, could you just delve into that a little bit more? How do you juggle, you've just gone through a literal life-altering change in your life, now being quadriplegic, but how do you juggle your own mental health, your own medical outcomes, and then you've still got to try and console your family and friends who are looking to you for answers on how they should feel, who are looking to you for positive news from doctors, and probably a country town like Albury going back a bunch of years, probably wanting to ask the question, will he ever walk again? Those sort of language that we know in some circumstances can be harmful.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky line to toe. It was sort of just to learn on the go process, but my friends and family from the start, obviously they were devastated, but generally they were pretty, all right, let's get on with the job, and that's sort of what we've always been as a family. And so they helped massively in just treating me normally, getting on with it, and that would help me at sort of days when I was struggling. And then some days when maybe I could tell they were struggling, it was my time to then, just even if I was having a tough day, I'd just put on a brave face for a day, and if they saw me happy, then I knew it made it easier for them as well. So it's kind of like a snowball effect where you're affecting each other back and forth, and it might be one person's turn one day and switch it up the next day. But that in saying that, they, if I was anything wrong, I could speak to them and have a good conversation with them about how I was feeling. But it was just massive. I think the normality was a big thing of just, even though I was in a chair now and unable to move and going through all these things, they did treat me normally. And then at the start, especially as I was starting to regain function, because early on I had no movement at all. So as I was able to regain a bit of function, them seeing that as well was able to give them, a bit more encouragement too. So that, I think those little increments that you get and just the little things you just try to grab on and essentially make a big deal about, and that helps everyone get through.
Where are they at now? The mates that felt like they had blame. Do you still have a relationship with them all, and are they comfortable with what happened?
Yeah, they're some of my best mates still. Actually had a big group of them up here on the weekend for for an event. So we all live in different places now. A lot of us, some are still down in Albury, some are in Newcastle, where I lived for a little bit, and there's some up on the Gold Coast. But they do now, where it's just come to essentially everyone's, yeah, I mean, at peace to an extent with where I'm at and acceptance of it. So, like I said, they still take the piss out of me. They, yeah, still treat me normally. So it's obviously a different relationship now, and you can't interact in the same ways you used to in a physical sense. But emotionally, and as mates, they're still just as good to me as they always were.
What's your relationship with pools?
Pools, I avoid them at all costs.
Was it part of your rehab, by the way? Did they try and get you in some sort of pool?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why I'm asking.
I did do a bit of water therapy early on, and it was weird actually. I remember the first time as I was, because back then in rehab there was a pool there I was in rehab down in Melbourne, and I remember as they were sort of hoisting me down into the water, I was watching my legs go in, and just couldn't feel the sensation of water, and it was just this strangest thing to my brain. I was just like, yeah, it was so weird, and because I was a water polo player before my accident, so I just spent so much time in water and just watching. So I was so familiar with what it felt like, but watching that happen, my brain was just, it didn't make sense to me.
And to that effect, we haven't really spoken about the fact that there's a couple of things else that happened after you dived into that pool that I found really interesting. The first one being people thought you were joking as you sort of, lay motionless in the pool. Secondly, I want to talk about what happened after the party and, because people didn't recognize the severity of it. But going back to that pool story, were you conscious the whole time? And because we've spoken about people who have dived into pools and they've spoken about like being fully aware of their surroundings, thinking they're going to drown because they've just lost movement in their arms and legs.
Yeah, I don't have a full sort of recollection of the whole event. I do have sort of a memory of running and jumping into the pool. And then I have a memory of being face down in the water, and I could see someone's legs sort of not too far from me. And I sort of knew I was in trouble. I didn't really know what had happened. I went to reach for their legs to help me, but I just couldn't move. And then, so from there until I'm back in hospital, I don't know if it's just sort of my body's shutting the memory out from there, or what's happened. But in between that, where I was pulled out of the pool and I was conscious on the side talking to people and that sort of thing, but I just don't have a memory from there. But yeah, that memory of being face down in the pool, seeing the legs and trying to reach, that's pretty vivid.
And then just the second part to that story is you were brought out of the pool. I guess it's towards the end of the night, like you said, speeches had been done. People didn't understand what had happened or weren't educated enough on, spinal cord injuries. Your mates went out in the town afterwards.
Yeah, after just talking about how good my mates are to me, then they just broke my neck and they'd go out to party. So
That's loose.
Yeah. No, I think again going back to what sort of mentioned earlier about young men thinking they're invincible and not really having an understanding or much exposure to disability. A lot of my mates kind of just thought I'd knocked myself out or something. I mean, your mind doesn't jump to spinal cord injury, especially so. I think they thought I knocked myself out, or Nick's hurt himself. He'll be right. He's an idiot, but he'll wake up with a hangover and sore head, and he'll be okay. So a lot of them, I did think, did go out, and then it wasn't until I think my mum might have called my best mate a bit later that night and sort of explained what happened, and it's sort of like, oh, shit, better go home.
Was it a good night for the boys? Do you know what they did?
Yeah, I think they kicked on Paddy's Irish bar down in
Paddy's.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, God. So what about going through the process of rehab? Did you have a lot of support? I know some people go to rehab that, sometimes they feel like they get a lot of love and a lot of support, but also sometimes people kind of cap their potential of what they can achieve. What was your experience like?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, early on through ICU and through hospital, it was fantastic. Got all the care I needed for my disability and for my injury, and can't fault any of that. And then it wasn't till, sort of get to rehab and being an athlete prior, and I had, like I said, had no movement at all. I could move my head, and that was about it. I was just so excited to get into that physical therapy side of things and just try to gain as much movement back as possible. And then I got to rehab and had you get 1 hour of physio a day. If your physio is sick, bad luck, you don't get any that day. You might get an hour of OT and just things where I was like, I want more than this. So I tried sourcing external rehab at Neuro Moves down in Melbourne. While I was in Melbourne, I thought might as well go there. I've got so much time in hospital sitting there, just staring out the window, that I may as well go make the most of it. So tried to do that. Tried to have a family friend who's a physio trained in neuro come and visit me and do a few exercises in my room. And just they did not like that at all. Either one, they essentially didn't want someone coming in and lack of a better term, treating me, even though we'll just move my arms around a little bit. Didn't want me going and sourcing external rehab because, they didn't want to be liable if anything happened to me. But I mean, I just sustained this life-changing injury, had no movement, had the motivation to want to give myself every chance to get better. And so really had to just advocate and say, look, I understand you don't want me to do this, but it's happening. So I was lucky I had sort of that, had the support from my family to really push, and was able to, push my body as much as I needed at the start.
We've heard a few stories about sort of in the medical field, people not wanting to take a risk with operations because of exactly what you've spoken about. When you do finally get treatment that you're advocating for yourself to be done, do you have to sign away your life with a waiver that, yes, I understand the risks and complexity of what's going on, and I could end up in a, different or maybe more difficult mobility, position if I was to go forward with this? Is that kind of put forward to you, which wouldn't happen to somebody who was able-bodied having treatment to better themselves?
I don't remember signing anything when I was down in there, but I remember having essentially meetings. I know when I was, really early on, when sort of my parents were doing a lot of the advocating for me before I was at a place where I could do it for myself. There was meetings had with people higher up in the hospital, and then once I was at a stage where I could, there was more meetings had where essentially the people higher up are saying, that they don't want to be liable for these things. And I'm saying, I'm in hospital and you guys are treating me for this, but it's still my body. This is still what I want to do to give myself every chance. When I leave this hospital, you guys aren't going to think about me again, but I'm going to carry this disability with me. So I need to give myself every chance of giving myself the best chance to regain as much movement as possible. So definitely things that I didn't think I would encounter. I thought it would be, as I said, when I was in hospital before I was moved to the rehab part, I was pumped to go. I was like, yep, get me to rehab, get me working every day, try to get as much back as possible. And it was just very underwhelming when I got there, sort of what was offered to me.
Geez, you've got a good head on your shoulders, brother. You've got a good outlook on life, and especially when you go through such a traumatic experience. Did you just get up and get after it straight away after the accident, or have you had some, struggles along the way?
I mean, there's definitely been tough times. To have in the blink of an eye, to have essentially, like, my life was all physical. That's what I love doing. So to have all that taken away, there has definitely been tough times. But I think the support I had early on from friends and family, and it's that normality that I keep going back to about the way my friends and family treated me, made it easier for me to get on with things. So I have always had a pretty positive outlook on things. I get even before my injury and since, where I'm just able to most of the time focus on the good things. But I was also given some good advice in rehab by an older guy that was in there with me, saying that, let yourself have the bad days, because without them you can't have the good days. And that really resonated with me, and something that I've tried to carry on is just, sometimes when you are having a crap day, to just, accept it, because that makes you almost appreciate the good days a bit more. So allowing myself to do that has helped massively too.
Well said.
We're 8 years after you acquired your injury now. You've embraced it to the point that you've named a part of your business the role in Celebrant, as well as having Drinking Buddy. So, two practices around your disability.
And a rival podcast.
Oh, and a rival podcast. Yeah, I won't mention the name of the podcast, Chats from a Chair. The second best disability podcast out there in Australia.
For now.
So can you tell us where does somebody by the way, I come from a radio background, and it kind of seems like every bloody radio announcer ends up getting their, wedding celebration or celebrant license. But where did it come for you? Like, where did you just go to a wedding one time and just go, this is a cracking bunch of fun. I'd love to get paid for this.
Yeah, just want all the attention on me for the day and take it away. But no, I'd sort of joked about it for a while, and then my brother got engaged, and he said to me, he knew I'd been joking about it, and he said, well, if you do it, you can officiate our wedding. So looked into it, I thought, bugger it, why not? And then it turned out to be a lot more effort than I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be like a weekend course or something, where it was a bit more than that, but I got it done and officiated my brother's wedding at the end of last year. So it was, really cool experience to be able to do that, and something that I spoke to another friend that is a celebrant up here in the Gold Coast area, and she was saying that, there's no one really with a disability or in a wheelchair that she knows of around this area in a wheelchair that is a celebrant. So I thought, a bit of a point of difference, just something else that to show. I try to now, with my position of having a disability, as much as possible, like push the boundaries and show that people with disabilities can do things. And I thought that's another way to do it. So yeah, it's been cool to do.
You live on the Gold Coast. I was recently up there for the wonderful, in November, Hayden and Macca had a beautiful wedding up there. We left from Kirra and we went like up the mountains. I can't remember. It was a place that was very badly affected by flooding. It's like a famous town. Anyway, went to this beautiful place on the hill, beautiful, green and lush. It poured rain and they got married down a hill next to a river. How's the accessibility of some of the sites that you'll have to go to? Because there's no way, and I don't mean to be rude, that you could have done this wedding. We got trapped. The bridge was getting covered with water on the way back. It was pretty treacherous. I mean, obviously you're planning your wedding celebrant months out. You can't really have a call in for the Mr. Weatherman. How does that work?
Yeah, it's something that I sort of just bring up with couples when I'm speaking to them early on, and just saying, making sure you understand, I guess, the extent of my disability, and that I can't get up if there's one stair at the front. That's one stair too many. Like, I can't do these things. The venue needs to be accessible, or if you're happy to visit it early on, then we can look at if there's a way to work around it. But just sort of try to be as clear as possible at the start that there are things that I just can't get around. I'll do my best to do whatever I can, but there are some things that just won't work. So whether that is that they have their hearts set on a venue and they say, okay, well, we want this venue, sorry, you can't do it, or whether they're like, okay, yep, happy to look for something that works. So yeah, again, just try to be as clear as possible at the start of what I can and can't do. And if that's a problem for them, then, it's their day. That's what matters to them. So that's fine. But if not, I'll do whatever I can to make it work.
And I totally don't want to sound like I'm being limiting of what you're capable of by saying that you wouldn't have been able to do this. But realistically, I mean, women in heels found it incredibly difficult just to get down to where they got married.
Yeah,
no, chuck it in forward drive. It should be fine.
What do you got against wheelchair users and women in heels, Charles? I will say I've got mates who have never been on a hike in their life, yet when they get married, it's on a cliff. It's like, why'd you choose this? Honestly, it's like, it's something about weddings, and it's like, I'm just going to go in the forest. I'm like, you don't even ever go to the forest. Why'd you choose forest for your wedding? It's a thing. I agree with you.
Yeah. And Gold Coast. Yeah, let's get married on the beach. Let's not. That's got nothing to do with people in chairs. That's just like, no one wants to see that. I don't want to take my shoes off as I walk out to watch two people get hitched. Crazy.
Well said. Hey, speaking of the podcast, mate, what is it? Who do you talk to? What do you do?
It's actually started with me and a mate doing it around people that were loved ones of people with disabilities and how they were affected. And then I've sort of extended it. My mate's now, he got too busy with other things, so I've kicked him to the curb and doing my own thing now. And I said I do a fair bit around disability and people with disabilities, sharing their story and different things, but also just people that have essentially overcome things in life, have different stories to tell. I try not to narrow it down too much now. I leave it pretty open to different things. So I've had some sports players, people with disabilities, and different things. So I just try to essentially share stories that I feel like would be good to put out there and good for people to hear.
Nice, mate.
Once again.
Who's your favourite guest so far?
Oh, yeah.
I had Dr. Richard Harris, the
Hey,
Thai Cave Rescue.
and actually a good Australian of the Year.
A good one, I know. They've gone downhill
Not a
since then,
pleb
haven't
one.
they?
They got right here. Washed up as.
Yeah. Yeah, so no, he was good. That was back when the award had some credibility about it.
Thank you.
Double swipe. Double swipe. All right, it is time for our Bowl of Uncomfortable. Nick, this is where we get sent a question. These are questions that maybe make you feel uncomfortable in the moment, maybe don't, but they're asked you to maybe make it less uncomfortable for people like yourself in the future with some of these content. Dylan, we've both got one.
Do you want me to kick us off?
Yeah, you go.
Now, you've semi-answered this in terms of the fact that you have forgiven your mates for their actions that night. However, do any of your family or friends resent them for the contributions they made?
I don't think so, no. I think nothing's ever been mentioned to me anyway, and the way they interact with each other, again, now, I'd say no. I think there was a lot at the start where I don't think we ever really looked to blame each other. It was more people thinking, what did they themselves do wrong that contributed to it? So I think it's almost helped in a way, and that's something I'm actually glad about with my disability, that, it was my fault and I can't blame someone else for it. So it's made it sort of easy to come to terms with and be at peace with.
Just off that, not my Bowl of Uncomfortable question, how long did it take to not be angry at yourself?
Well, I don't think very long at all, to be honest. Overall, even now, there's still times where, you're having a crap day and all the monotonous little things you got to do every day, having a disability you never had to do before. I just think, why the hell did you do it? But overall, I think it was pretty early on that I was able to come to terms with and, just get on with it. There was no point dwelling on it too much. Just had to get on with it.
This one's a very bizarre question. Would you prefer a receding hairline or to be in your chair?
I do not have a good shaped head for being bald, so it's a tough one, but I would have to go with the receding hairline.
You take the receding hairline?
Yeah, does that mean I'm able-bodied but have a receding hairline?
Yes.
Yeah, we've got to take that. I can wear a hat all the time.
Okay. Dylan loves this. He's going to chuck a caveat in. Watch this.
All right.
But you're banned from wearing hats, and
it's a comb over.
You're never allowed to go to Turkey. You're banned from Turkey.
It's always a spanner in there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, I got it. My head is not good for bald, but I'd have to cop that.
You cop it.
I'd have to cop that. Yeah.
Right.
Mate, don't say that, because if you go bald, you're just going to come back to this podcast and go,
double
what
it.
did I say that for?
Yeah, exactly.
George Costanza it. I think this person must be like, mid-30s. This is the age, like I'm in it, Dylan's in it, you're heading into it very slowly. But hair becomes the sort of affluence within our community. It's like, oh, mate, great hairline. Doesn't matter how much money.
You're just saying that because you just got flowing locks.
Well, I've got a bunch of mates who have genuinely considered the old Turkey trip, and I think, it's one of those things you can't put a value on, is just a good hairline. So I guess the person who was asked that might be struggling with that, and maybe they thought they would take the chair over the receding hairline they potentially might be having. Who knows?
They wanted justification to go to Turkey is what they wanted.
I think they just wanted a tick of approval. Of course, we can find Nick Dempsey online. It's therolling.celebrant.com or at Nick K. Dempsey. That is Dempsey. He chats from a chair, and all of the links to Nick is below if you want to connect with him, follow his stuff, or maybe even get married on the beach. Nick, we appreciate it, mate. Thank you so much for coming on ListenABLE, the number one.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks for having us, guys. Cheers.